It was a chilly evening in downtown Los Angeles. The streetlights flickered as a soft drizzle began to fall, casting a shimmering glow over the city sidewalks. Among the bustling pedestrians, cars honking in the distance, and the occasional musician strumming a guitar on a corner, sat a beggar. His name was Henry. Henry was a man with a story, though few ever stopped to hear it. Life hadn't been kind to him. Once a mechanic, he had lost his job, his home, and his family, all within a span of a few cruel years. Now he sat on the corner of 5th and Main, clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Please help, even $1 counts." That evening, as the drizzle turned into light rain, Henry noticed a man walking briskly down the street. The man was tall, wearing a black leather jacket, and had an air of purpose about him. Henry didn't recognize him immediately, but there was something familiar about his face. "Excuse me, sir," Henry called out, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting to indifferent passers-by. "Can you help me with $1?" The man paused, his head tilting slightly as if caught off guard. He turned to face Henry, and as he did, Henry's heart skipped a beat. It was Elon Musk. Henry didn't know much about Elon Musk except that he was a billionaire who had sent rockets into space and built electric cars. The thought of asking such a man for help made him feel small, almost foolish. But there was no taking it back now. Elon looked at Henry, his piercing eyes scanning the beggar's face. He didn't seem annoyed or hurried, just curious. After a moment, he spoke. $1? Elon repeated, his voice calm and even. Why $1? Henry blinked, surprised by the question. Most people either ignored him or tossed a coin his way without a second glance. "Well, sir," Henry began, "it's not much, but it's enough to get me a little something to eat. Maybe a coffee to keep me warm." Elon nodded, as though he were processing the request like a complex equation. Then, to Henry's astonishment, Elon crouched down so they were at eye level. "Tell me something, Henry." Henry's eyes widened. "How? How do you know my name?" Elon smiled faintly and pointed to a small badge on the beggar's chest. It was an old name tag from his mechanic days, still pinned to his jacket. "Oh," Henry muttered, feeling a little foolish. "Tell me," Elon continued, "if I gave you $100 instead of $1, what would you do with it?" Henry hesitated. This felt like a test, and he didn't want to fail it. "Well, sir, I'd get a hot meal for sure. Maybe buy a blanket or some clean clothes. Save the rest for tomorrow. Maybe get a bus ticket to somewhere better." Elon's expression didn't change. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before looking back at Henry. "What if I gave you $1,000? Henry's jaw dropped. He wasn't sure if Elon was serious or just toying with him. "1,000?" he stammered. "Yes, 1,000, Elon said, standing up now, still holding his phone. "What would you do with it?" Henry thought hard. I'd get off the streets, find a cheap motel to stay in, maybe start looking for a job. It would be enough to turn things around, I think." Elon seemed to ponder this. The rain was coming down harder now, but neither man moved. Pedestrians hurried past, oblivious to the extraordinary conversation taking place. "Interesting," Elon said finally. "And what if I gave you $10,000? Henry couldn't believe his ears. $10,000? Was this man serious? "Sir, if you gave me that much," Henry said, his voice trembling, "I'd start fresh, find a small apartment, maybe even reopen my old workshop. I used to fix cars, you know. I was good at it." Elon's lips curved into a thoughtful smile. He tapped something else on his phone, then slipped it back into his pocket. "Henry, I admire your honesty, but I'm not going to give you $1, or 1,000, or even 10,000. Henry's heart sank. Of course it had been too good to be true. "But," Elon continued, "I will give you something better." Henry looked up, confused. "Better than $10,000? Elon reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek business card. "This is my personal assistant's number. Tomorrow, you're going to call her. I'll have her set up an account for you with $100,000. But there's a catch." Henry stared at the card, his hands trembling as he took it. "A catch?" "Yes," Elon said, his tone serious now. "This isn't charity, Henry. It's an investment. You're going to use that money to rebuild your life, start your workshop again, and help at least 10 other people in situations like yours. Think you can do that?" Henry felt tears welling up in his eyes. He nodded fervently, clutching the card like it was a lifeline. "Yes, sir, I can do that. I will do that." Elon smiled again, this time warmly. "Good. I believe you." He glanced at his watch. "Now, I have to go, but remember, this is your chance. Don't waste it." With that, Elon turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as quickly as he had appeared. Henry sat there for a long time, staring at the card in his hand. The rain soaked through his clothes, but he didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. A year later, Henry stood in front of a modest garage on the outskirts of the city. A freshly painted sign above the door read, "Henry's Auto Repairs." Inside, the sound of tools clanging and engines rumbling filled the air. Business was good. Better than good. True to his word, Henry had used Elon's investment to turn his life around. He'd hired other people who had been down on their luck, giving them jobs and a second chance just like he'd been given. One afternoon, as Henry was wiping his hands on a greasy rag, a familiar black Tesla pulled up outside the shop. Henry's heart skipped a beat as the driver's door opened and Elon Musk stepped out. "Mr. Musk!" Henry exclaimed, rushing to greet him. "Elon," the billionaire corrected with a grin, "just checking in to see how my investment is doing." Henry beamed. "It's doing great, better than I ever imagined. And those 10 people? I've helped 20 so far." Elon's grin widened. "That's what I like to hear." As they stood there talking, Henry couldn't help but feel grateful, not just for the money, but for the faith Elon had shown in him. It had been the spark he needed to reignite his life. And from that day on, whenever someone walked into his shop in need of help, Henry would remember Elon's words. This isn't charity, it's an investment. And he'd do his best to pay it forward, one small act of kindness at a time.